My name is Tara diLorenzo, and I am interviewing Miss Nichols, my mom, on Thursday, March 30th, 2017. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. Now, let's start off with our first question. How are you connected with the local community?
Oh boy. Well, I moved here when I was about your age. Actually, 7th grade. I moved here in the summer between 6th and 7th grade. And except for going to college, I've lived here ever since then.
That is very interesting. Now, second question. Do you have any experiences that involve Otsego Lake?
Oh, yes. I used to live up on the side of the lake, just below Glimmerglass State Park, and my brother and I had a boat. And we would go water skiing and kneeboarding and fishing and diving off the dock and playing. And now we have a boat, and every once in a while we go out during the summer with my kids and go swimming. Sometimes we even sleep out on our boat. So the lake is a big part of our community, and I really appreciate that we have something so great here.
That is very funny. What is your most favorite memory of your life in this community?
That's a tough one. I don't know that I have a single most favorite memory of my life in this community, but it would have to be some things that I do with my family, like the community dinner on Main Street in October, when we close the street off and we have a community dinner and everybody in town shows up and eats food together. That's probably right up there. That's got to be in the top 3.
Very interesting. How long were you police chief?
I was police chief for 7 years.
Wow. Were you a police before you became police chief?
I was. I got hired by Oneonta Police in 1994. And I went to the police academy, and I worked at Oneonta until 2000. And then in 2000, I transferred up to Cooperstown and was a police officer. And then in 2005, the chief and the sergeant decided to retire within a month of each other. So there were 2 job openings, so I applied to be chief. Wow,
so you know a lot about police now. How old were you when you started being a police, just regular police?
I was 23 years old.
Wow, so you were finished with college?
I was done with college, yep.
When you became police chief, were you glad, and why?
That's another tough question. I was really glad. It's tough. It's a tough job to get because you have to take a test. Mm-hmm. You have to get hired by the city or the village, and then after I had the job for 6 months, then I had to take a test. Oh. And I had to take this test with a whole bunch of other people who wanted the job. Mm-hmm. And I had to be in the top 3 in order to keep the job, which is a lot of pressure.
Oh, yeah.
And I was really nervous. But there were probably 10 people there taking the test with me, including your dad. And so I got in the top 3. I got number 1, actually. And so that was pretty good. So then I got to keep the job.
That's very nice.
But I was very excited to get it, and a little bit nervous, too.
Were you ever on duty at the lake, like on call?
Around the shore, yes, but never on the water. So I never rode on a boat, like a police boat or anything.
Okay.
The sheriff's department has a police boat they use to patrol the lake, but Cooperstown Village doesn't have one.
Very. Okay. Why did you want to be a police chief?
Well, I really liked being a police officer. When I got out of college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I saw an ad in the newspaper, in the Daily Star, for Oneonta police officers, and it cost $10 to take a test to see if you could be a police officer. And I thought, well, I have $10, so I'm going to do it. So I took the test, and I did pretty well, and then they hired me, and I really, really liked being a police officer. It was fun and scary and adventurous, and every day is a little bit different. It was always something new and interesting, and always challenging. So I really liked that. And being police chief was even more of that.
What was it like being a police officer in Cooperstown?
Very nice. Compared to other places, Cooperstown was a really fun place to be a police officer, especially in the summer, because it seems like almost everybody who is here was really happy to be here.
Right.
Like they're on vacation and they were having a great time. And so for the most part, everybody was really happy in Cooperstown. And Cooperstown doesn't have a whole lot of huge crimes, so it was a very friendly place to work.
Could you describe the house you remember most about this community?
Yes. When I was a kid, I lived in the house right next to the school, right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's 17 Walnut Street. And my parents bought that house in, let's see, it might have been like 1980, 1981.
Pretty early, wow.
And then we fixed it up, and we did a lot of work to it. We had a big pool out back, and it was really cool living right next to the school. So like after finals or at the end of the school year, when it was hot, all my friends would come over and we'd go swimming in the pool. And that was a great house to grow up in.
Very interesting. What was your first job?
Well, this is going to sound strange, but my first job was my first real job, like in college, was being mosquito bait. It was during the school year, and I was at a college where they were doing some experiments on what kinds of things would keep mosquitoes off of people, and they tried different things like DEET and Skin So Soft lotion and some other things, and they needed someone to help catch mosquitoes. And so I would stand out there in the yard at the school at my college in shorts and a t-shirt and let mosquitoes land on me, and then people would swarm around me and catch the mosquitoes and put them into a big fish tank. And I got paid $5 an hour to be mosquito bait.
How many times do you think you got stung?
I don't think I got stung at all. I think they were pretty quick. I probably had 6 people helping, and I'd be like, left knee, there's one on my left knee. Quick, my elbow, get one off my elbow. And so they were pretty quick at getting the mosquitoes. I don't think they really had time to sting me or bite me, whatever.
That is a pretty interesting story you've got there.
Yeah, it was a strange job.
Did you go to Cooperstown Elementary School?
I did not. I moved here in 7th grade, so I missed everything in the elementary school, but I got the whole middle school and high school.
So you went right to the high school behind us.
Straight to 7th grade. Before that, I lived in Oneonta, and I went to Valley View.
Very interesting. How long have you been married, and where did you get married?
I have not been married too long. I've been married since '08, so that's 9 years. And we got married in our backyard because Mark and I already had the house, the mill house that we lived in with our kids. And so we had a big family ceremony in our backyard, and it was really an awesome day.
What is your favorite restaurant in Cooperstown, and why?
Well, at the risk of offending all the other restaurants in Cooperstown, I have to say that it's a toss-up between Mel's and Doubleday. Doubleday Cafe, but Mel's is giving them a run for their money. They're both awesome places.
I agree. Now, as we are coming to an end of our time together, I have a few more questions.
Okay.
What words of wisdom or advice would you give to young people today about this community?
Oh, well, I would say that a lot of times when people are, like, say in high school, this community doesn't seem very exciting. Like, we don't have a movie theater, there's no roller skating rink. It might seem like there's not so much to do for young people, but this community is so packed full of fun activities that there's always something going on. There are concerts and musics and festivals and dinners and all sorts of community things, and such a variety that all you have to do is look around and you can always find something to do. It's just a really impressive place to live. And when I left Cooperstown, I was 17, and I went to college when I was 17, and I went to Maine, and I said, oh, I'm so glad to get out of Cooperstown, that little tiny rinky-dink town. And then when I grew up, I decided that Cooperstown was pretty special, so I came back. So it's really an impressive place to live. The community support is amazing, and there's not too many other places in the world like this.
Did you go to Maine before you became a police chief?
Yes, I went to Maine for 4 years of college, and then while I was a police officer, I went back to college to get my master's degree.
And what changes have you seen in your life living in Cooperstown, and how do you feel about those changes?
Well, there's been a few things that have changed. We have a lot more stop signs now than we used to.
Is that good?
I don't know. I don't think that's really a terribly great thing, but it's not bad either. We have paid parking on Main Street in downtown, which is awesome. I don't prefer to pay in a parking space, but the amount of money that the village makes is amazing. So people who live here have to pay less taxes. And if you know about Cooperstown taxes, they're pretty high.
Yeah.
And so that's a great way to help out people who live in Cooperstown.
Yes.
So there are some changes like that. But the community itself hasn't changed a whole lot. Like the same people who I grew up with here, a lot of them still live here, and all their families are here. So I kind of feel like I could send my kids walking downtown to go get a cup of smoothies, and that you'd see 10 people along the way who know you. That's kind of a cool thing.
And is there anything else you would like us to know about your life growing up in this community?
Yes. Here's a big thing. Well, in the 1980s, when AIDS was a big thing, and communities were having a tough time dealing with that, my little brother had AIDS, and Cooperstown was a special place to live because all of the people who lived around us helped take care of us. Some towns were kicking people out of town, or in some places they even had their houses burned down, and really bad stuff was happening to people who had this disease because we didn't understand the disease very well. And Cooperstown was not like that. Cooperstown was a really special place, and they supported us, and Cooperstown was very friendly for that. And so I think that is a big reason that I decided to come back and raise my kids here.
Is when your brother had AIDS, did you live on that red house?
Yes, we lived in that red house, 17 Walnut Street, and then eventually we moved up on the side of the lake by Glimmerglass, that place.
And last question.
Okay.
Do you have any funny stories that you would like to share with our community?
I'm sure I do. Let me think for a minute. What kind of funny stories are you looking for? Do you want to pause for a second? Back on? Okay. So I have 2 stories that I'll tell you.
That is perfectly great.
Okay. So one, I told you we had that pool in the backyard at 17 Walnut Street.
Right.
And in the wintertime, we used to cover the pool over with a big plastic sheet so that the leaves and gross stuff would stay out of it. And one day, Henry, my little brother, and I were sitting out by the pool deck, and I saw this thing at the top of the water. It looked like a gigantic spider just on top of the water. And when I got closer and looked at it, it wasn't a spider. I could see that it was whiskers from a squirrel's head. And it just came up and broke the surface of the water and then went back down. And I could just start to see this little baby squirrel that just went under the water and then didn't come back up again. And so I got a skimmer, and Henry and I scooped this squirrel out of the water, and it looked like it was dead. Mm-hmm. And so we shook it upside down, and we squeezed its chest and blew into its mouth, and we tried to put some air into it and squeeze the water out of its lungs, and eventually the squirrel got so it was breathing again.
Wow!
So that was pretty cool. But its body wasn't working very well, so we kept it in a bird cage for a couple days. And so after the first day, it couldn't move any of its arms or legs. And then the next day, it could just move its front arms, and we were feeding it squirrel food. We got some milk from Dr. Fassett, the vet, so we could feed it some, I think it was actually dog milk. I don't remember. And then the next day, it started to move its back legs, and so then when it started running around the cage, we decided it was time to let the squirrel go, because there was a family of baby squirrels living in the front yard in a tree.
Right.
And so we let this baby squirrel go, and it was funny because at first you could see which one it was, because the squirrel was still a little slower than all the other squirrels, and a little bit dopey, like when it was running, it would fall down. But eventually it got just as fast as the rest of the squirrels. It recovered so well, you couldn't even tell which one it was anymore. But I think that squirrel must have told all of its brothers and sisters that we were good people, because after that, those little baby squirrels would follow us around the yard whenever we were in the yard. These little baby squirrels would follow us around thinking they were going to get food. And
like to be saved.
Right. So one day we had a garage sale there in the front yard, and there was this little 4-year-old kid walking around, and the squirrel started following this little kid, and his mom came running over and scooped him up because she thought maybe they were going to attack him. Right. So.
And your other one?
So, well, that's my favorite 17 Walnut Street story. That's a good one. Those were fun times. We used to rescue lots of little animals. That was always a fun thing that I liked to do. And, okay, well, I'm trying to think of a appropriate story for police work. and I think I've got one. So 20 years ago, I went to school to become a firearms instructor.
Right.
Like to teach other police officers how to shoot guns and how to have good target practice and good skills. And so I've been doing that for 20 years. And one of the things that I always thought was a really good idea was something that I learned, is that when a police officer ever draws their gun, they yell, "Police, don't move!" Because if everybody yells the same thing, "Police, don't move!" If all the police officers are saying the same thing, then nobody gets confused, and like you won't reach into your pockets or do anything that might make the police nervous. And so I learned that when I was in the police academy. They used to teach us that every time we were out on the range shooting at our targets, we'd draw our guns and we'd have to yell, "Police, don't move!" And then we'd wait and see, and then the instructors would tell us whether we were going to fire any shots. So anyway, there was this one time where we had a burglary alarm at a place on Chestnut Street in Oneonta. And we used to get lots of burglary alarms, but not too many burglaries. You know, like sometimes a bat would be loose in the house or something, and it would set off a motion sensor. But most of them turned out to be false alarms. And so in this one, it was at a place called the Gamers Bazaar. It was a game store. And I was driving the police car, and my friend Doug was in the passenger seat, the other police officer, and we got this burglary alarm. And it was like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and so I was driving like, and I drove right up to the place. And as we were driving up to this place, 2 other police officers are coming the other way in another car. One of them, Mark, your dad. And Mark comes on the radio and he says, "There's 2 guys running across the roof." And I was like, holy crow, this is like an actual real burglary. And so I pulled the police car right up to the front door, right up over the sidewalk, ba-bam, ba-bam, and I park it right in front of the door so that if there was anybody in the building, they can't get out that way. And then I bailed out of the car, and Doug, my partner, he bailed out, and he went one way and I went the other way. We didn't plan that at all. And I ran around the side of the building, and I see these 2 guys running across the top of the roof, and they jumped down onto a lower spot, and then they both jumped down right in front of me. One of them took off running. He was so fast, there's no way I could have caught him. And the other guy, he landed probably 10 or 15 feet away from me, and he had this huge knife. Have you ever heard of a Rambo knife?
No.
It's a big kind of knife with like spiky stuff on the back of it. It's a big, nasty looking knife, and he's holding this knife in his right hand. And so I'm like, for just a moment, I was a little bit panicked, and I thought, I could probably run away and nobody'd even notice. And then I hear this big booming voice say, "Police, don't move!" And I look down, and there's my gun in my hand. I did the training without even thinking about it. I grabbed my gun and I yelled, "Police, don't move!" And he didn't move. And then I was like, holy cow, it's working! And so then I yelled, "Drop the knife!" And he did. And then I yelled, "Get on the ground!" And he did. And so then I went up and I handcuffed him. I took his knife. I put my gun away. And I brought him back to the police car. And at the same time, Doug and Mike and Mark were coming around the other side of the building with their one guy with no knife. And so Doug asked me, "How did you do that?" And I said, "Oh, it's because I'm so big and strong." But really, it wasn't any of that. It was just that somebody trained me the right way to do it.
Right.
And the guy listened, and I yelled, "Police, don't move," without even thinking about it. And so sometimes having good training is even better than being good. So
when you say police don't move, does it mean like the police are coming, don't move to the suspect?
Yep.
Or does it mean every other police just stand still?
Oh, no, it means I'm the police. The police are here. Don't move.
Like the person who's inside the house or
Right.
burglaring.
Right.
Or whoever's doing
So
it.
yeah, it's 2 things. It's one, it's identifying you as police in case it was too dark for them to see your uniform or whatever. Say, "This is the police. Now you don't move."
Right.
And then you have a chance to figure out if they have weapons or if they're going to listen to you. And so it was pretty funny that I captured that guy. I think that's when, it was about a couple months after that I asked your dad out on our first date. And I think he was so impressed with that story that he said yes.
Thank you for sharing your great stories with me today.
You're
I hope
welcome.
the community loves them.
I hope so too.